US military is undoubtedly the most powerful of any nation, with hundreds of bases across the world and nearly a dozen nuclear-powered supercarriers. It has the ability to wage war anywhere on the planet. However, over the past few decades, this lead has slowly dwindled. With the rise of the Chinese army and modernization in Russia, along with spending cuts after the end of the Cold War, America's military advantage has decreased significantly. This video is a list of things that the US can focus on to regain and to hold the advantage. Compared to other countries, the US military is offensively oriented. With aircraft carriers and air bases across the world and two large oceans separating them from any threat, the US has not spent the same amount of effort as nations like China and Russia at protecting the homeland from invasion. A clear example of this is land-based surface-to-air defense. Russia and China have shielded their cities and bases with SAMs, or surface-to-air missile systems. Over the years, they have produced very advanced, long-ranged, highly mobile SAM systems like the S-400 and the HQ-9. Historically, the US did this as well. At one point, all major cities were guarded with Nike missile sites. The 250-plus Nike missile sites were eventually shut down in the 70s to cut cost and also due to the rise of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which it could not defend against. Today, America's main surface-to-air missile system is the Patriot. While the Patriot is undoubtedly a highly advanced system that has been refined with decades of upgrades and improvements, it has several issues. It takes much longer than the Russian and Chinese systems to set up. It has a shorter range, and it cannot defend 360 degrees around it. This is because the system is launched at an angle, and not vertically like the S-300 and the HQ-9. The US has began research into a replacement for the Patriot. The new system is called MEADS, or Medium Extended Air Defense System. MEADS can deploy quicker, it has a longer range, and it can defend against in every direction. However, the US military decided in 2011 not to purchase the MEADS due to defense spending cuts. The US will need to develop a new system in the future that can defend its country and bases against an increasingly advanced Russian and Chinese threat. America's go-to anti-ship missile is the Harpoon. The Harpoon was first put into service 40 years ago in 1977. It was state-of-the-art when it was developed, but now is very outdated. It has a range of less than 100 miles and flies subsonic. Modern Russian and Chinese naval ships carry large numbers of advanced surface-to-air missiles, and slow-flying missiles like the Harpoon is unlikely to make it to the target before being shot down. What the US needs is an advanced, long-range, sea-skimming, supersonic anti-ship missile. Russia has had supersonic anti-ship missiles for decades now. Even nations like India have fielded their own, named BrahMos. BrahMos flies very, very low to the surface of the water and at speeds of up to Mach 3, or 3 times the speed of sound. Anti-ship warfare is something that the US military has neglected since the end of the Cold War, as its enemies in recent wars have no real navy. The US Navy has been developing a replacement for the Harpoon called the LRASM. They are also upgrading Tomahawk cruise missiles to have the ability to hit ships. However, both are still subsonic, giving the enemy time to react and shoot them down. For the US military to hold its advantage, they will need to develop their own weapon, similar to BrahMos. Short and medium-range ballistic missiles are missiles with a range from 300 to 3,000 miles. These missiles have many benefits over cruise missiles, mainly because they fly much, much faster, making them much harder to defend against. The US and Russia signed the INF Treaty in 1988 to ban these missiles. However, nations such as China, India, Israel, and North Korea have all continued to deploy and develop these missiles. Russia itself has recently gone against the treaty by developing and deploying the Iskander ballistic missiles. With its potential enemies all developing these missiles, the US risks falling behind in its capability. China, for example, has produced the DF-21D, which is capable of targeting US naval ships from thousands of miles away. With China building its own navy, complete with aircraft carriers, the US could use a weapon similar to this to hold them at bay. America's intercontinental ballistic missile forces are aging. Its main land-based missile is the Minuteman III. The Minuteman III was first built almost 50 years ago. Since then, nations like Russia and China have begun to develop advanced missile defenses. The US needs a new missile that can defeat these defenses. Ways of doing this is using decoy warheads, so that an interceptor missile does not know which one is the real warhead. And also, you can increase maneuverability, which makes plotting an intercept course much more complicated. Both Russia and China have recently developed modern, advanced intercontinental ballistic missiles in the past 2 decades. Meanwhile, the US is still using the same missile it designed nearly half a century ago. These are just a few of the many ways the US military needs to improve its forces in order to maintain the advantage. Without these, the US risks falling behind other world powers.